Hello students, Namaste. Welcome to the daily current affairs analysis for the civil services examination. Today we are analyzing the paper dated 26th of March 2024. Let us jump into the news. The front page has few news important for us like this one. United Nations calls for ceasefire in Gaza during the month of Ramzan. Now we all know that there is an ongoing issue of Israel-Palestine that is causing a much uproar globally. But since this news is just about the ceasefire and not about the issue as such, we will just look at the issue from the perspective of prelims. That is, we will go into the UNSC and its members. UNSC, as we all know, that it has 15 members, 5 permanent and 10 your non-permanent members. P5 are Russia, US, Britain, China, and France, right? And the 10 non-permanent members include these ones that we have mentioned here. Some of them are from eastern part of the world, some are from the African, and some are from the American island and continent. Now, one important thing here that I would like to ask from you is India a member of UNSC? If not, what you have to comment all this information. And if not, if India is not the member of UNSC, what was the last tenure of India as member, and how often India has been elected as the member of UNSC? Also, I want you to answer this question, that which nation is the most frequently elected UNSC member, right? So this can be important from the perspective of the prelims examination. Now let us go into the next news. This is about the Mahakal temple. So there was this fire incident which caused injury to various devotees. So what is important here for us is this Mahakal temple, which is a Jyotirling shrine in India. Madhya Pradesh has 2 Jyotirling shrines, as we might be knowing. One is this Mahakal temple and other is the Omkareshwar temple. Mahakal temple is important also because it is located in the city of Ujjain, and it is located near the Shipra river. There are 12 Jyotirling shrines in India. We don't have to remember all of them, but few of them can be remembered just for matching purpose or some answers in the art and culture part of general studies paper 1. The northernmost Jyotirling in India is Kedarnath, which is obviously in Uttarakhand. The westernmost is in Nageshwar, which is located in Gujarat, Porbandar district. Easternmost is Vaidyanath. It is in Jharkhand, the Santhal Parganas. Southernmost is Rameshwaram in Tamil Nadu, right? So this is all that we have to understand here. Next one. EU probe into tech giants for violation of new law may trigger hefty fines. So there is this Digital Markets Regulation Act which has been passed by European Union countries and has come into effect from 2nd of May 2023. UPSC has often asked questions on EU and its acts, right? Like GDPR and others, like BTIA, the treaty that is to be signed between India and which is yet to be signed between India and EU countries. What is important for us here is this Digital Markets Act and the concept of gatekeepers. Gatekeepers, as this act defines, are the digital platforms which act as gateway between business and consumers in relation to their core platform services. You can also understand these gatekeepers as the big tech companies like Alphabet, Amazon, Facebook, that is Meta, Apple, ByteDance, which owns the TikTok, etc. And their core platform service is to act as a gatekeeper. If there is some editorial related to it, we'll go into deep. Otherwise, just this piece of information will be suffice for the prelims perspective, right? Also, one important thing here is to remember this 27 EU countries. Earlier we had 28, but Since UK made an exit, which is called the Brexit, we have the 27 ones, right? So you can look into it and have a glance over which countries are part of EU. And also comment, if possible, what is your Shenzhen area, okay? And is Switzerland part of EU? Also comment this. Next one is a political news, but one important piece of information that I found, that's why I've included it, is the name of this person called Azimullah Khan, who was a strategist in the First War of Independence, which is the 1857 war. So he was the one to coin this slogan called as Madar-e-Watan Bharat Mata Ki Jai. This is only the important piece of information that I found here. If needed, you can have a look at it. Next one, the states or news. Here there is a water crisis which is going on in Bengaluru, which is linked to the urbanization of Kodagu district. Kodagu district, as you might be knowing, that it is the district from where the Kaveri river originates. It is the place which hosts Tal Kaveri, which is the Brahmagiri hills, and from where this Kaveri river originates. Kaveri is an important river of South India. It flows through two states, Karnataka, and drains into the Bay of Bengal through Tamil Nadu. Here you can also look at one important thing, which is the tributaries of Kaveri. UPSC is often asked the tributaries, and the southern rivers are way more important for the civil service examination. So you can look at the tributaries like Hemavati, Kabini, Bhavani, etc. But I am not going into deep, because I want you to comment that which you have to list down the right and left bank tributaries of Kaveri, because UPSC is also asked which one is the right bank and which one is the left bank tributary. So do this as your task. Now moving on to the next one. China claims Arunachal Pradesh. You might be knowing that China has historically claimed Arunachal Pradesh, and it names this place as some name which is Jiangnan, the Chinese official name for Arunachal Pradesh. We don't have to remember this Jiangnan thing, but what we have to remember and go through is the map, the border with China. Also tell me, is China sharing the largest border with India, or there is some other country which does that? Now looking into the map, the western part, the western border, which is also the contentious one, includes this place, which has been acceded by Pakistan to China, and obviously which is claimed by India as part of the POK. In the 1962 war, China gained the claim of this Aksai Chin area. Now it is with the China. Then the most contentious here is the eastern one, where China claims entire Arunachal Pradesh, and this one is also known as the McMahon line, which is yet to be which is still a disputed line between India and China, because you might be knowing there was a young husband mission sent by the Britishers in 1914, and which concluded a treaty with Tibet, and China says that Tibet was not a sovereign country back then, so it does not recognize this transfer of Arunachal Pradesh to India by the Tibet, right? If there is an article regarding this, we will go deep into it. Otherwise, this piece of information is sufficient for us. Now getting to the next one, science in depth. This article talks about the weakness of low durability of these vaccines. Since vaccines have an important role to play to trigger the immunity, as they insert a kind of memory in the immune cells, but the vaccines nowadays have a problem that they do not provide a long lasting protection. The protection is mostly like 20 years, or some also provide a lesser immunity. So what we need to understand here is the how immunity functions and what is the vaccine reforms. This is sufficient for us here. Immunity obviously is body's ability to resist or defend against harmful pathogens. What are pathogens? The microorganisms like virus, bacteria, and fungi, etc. Right. So what immune system does is it is comprised of various components like blood cells, antibodies, and special organs like thymus and spleen. Immune system detects a foreign invader, the pathogen, and mounts a response to eliminate the pathogen and prevent infection. Okay, so this can be acquired, or also it can be inserted through vaccines. Now, how vaccines um, how vaccines responds? Vaccines are obviously a biological preparation. They trigger a immune response. A pathogen, a weak pathogen, harmless pathogen is inserted into the body. We can see here this one. Vaccines work by introducing immune system to a harmless version of pathogen, like any virus, bacteria, fungi, etc. Right? And what happens is, after the initial immune response dies down, some cells develop memory and remain in the body long term to protect against future infection. So basically it gives a kind of a memory to cells that cells must remember, and that there is a pathogen like this, and it may cause a disease. So if cells are able to recognize these pathogens in the earlier stage, we will not be grasped by those deadly diseases like SARS or any other COVID or any other diseases, right? So this is the basic thing. Many times a question have been asked in prelims and mains regarding vaccine and immune response. So you can look into this and read this more. I'll provide the PDF in the link. The next news is Southern African nation of Malawi has declared a state of disaster. We know that since last year this El Nino is going on. El Nino. So here we can understand few things like what is El Nino and what has been happening in the southern African countries, which is causing this severe rainfall deficit and the severe food crisis. The World Food Program said that there were nearly 50 million people in southern and central African countries facing food insecurity even before the dry spells in decades hit. So these are the southern African countries. For the map perspective, we can look into it. Angola, Namibia, Southern Africa, South Africa, they border the Atlantic Ocean. The landlocked ones are Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Swaziland, Lesotho, and the one which borders your Indian Ocean is Mozambique. Now look into the El Nino part. In the normal years, you will see that the western part of the Pacific, which is near Australia, experiences the low pressure. So there is a rainfall in this place. The southern African countries also experiences a rainfall, and there is a high pressure in the eastern part of the Pacific, that is which is near your southern American countries. So we all know that winds blow from high pressure to low pressure. So if there is a low pressure in this side, so there will be more rainfall in this side. Whereas in the El Nino year, what happens is the reverse. The low pressure belts get shifted to the eastern Pacific Ocean, which is the west of your central and southern American countries. So there is a high pressure near Australia and this region. So this region experiences less of rainfall, whereas the eastern part of Pacific experiences more rainfall in the El Nino years. There is also a phenomenon known as La Nina, which is the reverse of it. We will look into it if required in the next, whenever we discuss it next. There is an editorial named The Sordid Scheme. This editorial talks about the recent judgment of Supreme Court of India and the reluctance of the initial reluctance of SBI to provide the data to Supreme Court of Electoral Bonds. Now, after the intervention of the court, this SBI has provided the data, and some startling revelations have been made that prompt data matching exercises by news organization connects donors with political parties, which has exposed the flaws in argument for opacity of electoral bonds. There is also a clear connection which emerges between large donation to certain political parties and subsequent awarding of high value infrastructure contracts to bond purchasers. So there might be a deal, the hidden deal between political parties and these big houses, business houses, that if you provide us with heavy this donations, we will provide you some infrastructure contract in return. So that's why there was the lack of transparency in this electoral bond scheme, and has been subsequently quashed by the Honorable Court. Also, there is this thing that top 19 firms, which were the major donors, overwhelmingly support the ruling party, indicating bonds may have been used to influence government decisions. So they might have influenced the government decision, like Digital India and etc. etc. Might have been influenced by these organizations, and some benefits might have been provided to them in favor of the donations that they have made. Right? You can read more in this. The next one is terror in Moscow, and IS sees Russia as an enemy. So there are these continuing attacks in Russia by ISIS. ISIS has a unit called as ISIS Khorasan, which is largely comprising Central Asian militants, and it has gained power once this Taliban has come into power in Afghanistan in August 2021. This ISK uses anti-Russian and anti-Iranian propaganda to recruit Central Asian, African, your Afghans and Pakistanis. So the article says that as long as Taliban maintains a Pashtun-only rule in Afghanistan and instability persists in West Asia, groups like IS will find opportunities to grow and strike. So not much and to see here. We can just see that this Russian invasion in Syria caused this Islamic influence, this Islamic movement to come and rise, and it is currently a big threat to the Putin regime because of the continuing attacks. Right? Next one, China want to be superpower. What is the context of this information? That all these issues are going on in the world, and China has been playing a role of a superpower, like its mediation efforts, the positive portrayal of Xi Jinping's effort, the facilitate detente between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which has been portrayed as positively worldwide, especially in China's state-controlled media, endorsement of international mediation organization. China wants this international mediation organization, and it is being backed by countries like Algeria, Pakistan, Sudan, which are nothing but the members of its BRI initiative, and some countries to which it has given hefty loans as part of its debt trap and diplomacy. Cautious approach in regional conflicts. China has been taking on cautious conflict approach. It is not intervening as such because it wants to have it wants to safeguard its economic interest while projecting its image of responsible international actor. Geopolitical aims and challenges. China wants to position itself as an alternative to Western interventionism. So West, like US, has been seen as an interventionist in Middle East. So we have seen that Islamic terrorism also has some influenced due to the US intervention in the Middle East region. So China wants to position itself as a non-interventionist. Second is selective support for Palestinian cause. China has been selectively supporting Palestinian cause, and it has been reluctant to condemn Hamas, which demonstrate the challenges in mediation, diplomacy, and navigation complex regional dynamics. Challenges in mediation diplomacy. China wants to reflect its risk-averse strategy. Now China is being called as a utilitarian superpower. Utilitarian means a superpower which wants to use its power for an end. The end is its own rise, its own economic might. So it wants to displace American hegemony in the region. It wants to position itself as a soft hegemon. You can use these words like soft hegemon rather than assertive superpower. Perception of hollow mediation efforts. Utilitarian status as a superpower. China's role in Middle East highlights its utilitarian status as a superpower, where it remains a hedging option for regional actors while grappling with challenges and offering viable alternatives to Western central policies. Now here, few important things that we can see is China's rise. In the PPP terms, if you might be knowing that China is the largest economy in the PPP terms, around $40 trillion, and whereas your USA is $25 trillion. It is in the PPP terms, not in the absolute terms. China's debt trap. We all know that China has been vocally advocating its debt trap diplomacy. The nations like Pakistan, Kenya, Angola, Sri Lanka, etc. have been infected by this. China's rise as a superpower. You can see this data and use this data in your answers, right? I've provided this. Next is dams of South India. So it has mentioned that water levels less than 25% many major dams in South India. We can look at the major dams in South India. Questions have been asked earlier also, like Aliyar, on the Aliyar Dam. So there is Mettur Dam, right? Mulla Periyar Dam, PAP, Parambicular, Krishna Rajasagar, Almaty Dam. You have to comment which river flows. These dams are located on which of the rivers, right? This PAP is your Parambicular Ariyar project. A question have been asked previously on this. Next is on campaigning in the name of religion. So it mentions about section 123 of Representation of People Act, which says that the candidate should refrain from the corrupt electoral practices. That the section denounces any attempt by a candidate to promote feelings of enmity or hatred among citizens on these grounds during the election. So what is the context? Context is the BJP has launched a campaign, but we don't have to get into BJP Congress thing. What we have to remember is this one, this section 123(3) of clause 3 of Representation of People's Act, and also this Abhiram Singh versus CD Komachan, a 7-judge bench by a majority of 4-3 held that candidates shall not appeal for votes on the basis of not just his or her religion but also of the voters. So this is all which is important here. Next is semiconductors. We all know that there are, in terms of conductivity, the electrical resistance on the one which has the lowest electrical resistance are the conductors, which are gold, silver, copper, iron, aluminum, etc. Then there are at the extreme end the insulators, which have very high electrical resistance, that they do not allow free flow of electric ions. These are glass, rubber, oil, plastic, diamond, etc. And in between there are semiconductors, which includes silicon, germanium, selenium, gallium arsenide, etc. Now we will get into what is a semiconductor and all of that later, but you can see how the heat transfer works. Whenever you boil water, the boiling of water that is taking place inside the pan is the convection, which is movement of hot fluid. The heat emission, the emission of electromagnetic rays from below is radiation, and the transfer of energy between adjacent molecule, that is from pan to the handle, is conduction, right? So in conductivity we are studying about this semiconductors and all of that. So you can see the manufacturing process. The purified silicons are formed into wafers and processed with various technologies like doping and layer deposition. Then chips are made, which are used in electronic devices. There are varied uses of semiconductor. That's why all countries want to be the super house of manufacturing. It includes usages like in smartphone, watches, fans, television, automotive system, etc., etc. So it has very wide use, semiconductors. That's why India also has this India Semiconductor Mission, through which it is wanting to become a global semiconductor manufacturing hub. Currently, the manufacturers are Qualcomm, Nvidia, etc., etc. So this is about this news. Now, last one is mapping. So this Thailand delivers aid to Myanmar, but critics say it only helps the ruling junta. We all know that Myanmar is going through this military rule. And so what important thing is your ASEAN countries here. You can look at the ASEAN countries. There is a mnemonic to remember the ASEAN countries, which is BPL, CTV, IS, MM. B stands for Brunei, P stands for Philippines, L for Laos, C for Cambodia, T for Thailand, V for Vietnam, I for Indonesia, S for Singapore, M for Malaysia, M for your Myanmar, right? You have to see that whether is India part of East Asia Summit? Yes, India is part of East Asia Summit. You can see the green one, India is part of it, East Asia Summit. Australia, your Russia also. China is not part of East Asia Summit, so you have to remember this. US is also part of East Asia Summit, right? So this was all about today's news. We will get to the next edition tomorrow. Thank you and have a nice day. Till then.